Hey guys, welcome to another beautiful sunny day on the island of Malden. So I was online and I saw people making comments about how ineffective mortars are in Antistasi Ultimate. I even saw one guy who'd made a guide that talked about, only fire one round from your mortar team and then move it to limit the enemy's counter battery response. And then I was talking to the Bald Eagle Gaming, and I explained to him how I use mortars, and he's like, man, that is genius. Well, I don't necessarily think it's genius, but I do think it's much more effective than the average person is using mortars. So to those commentators, I don't mean to be critical of those people that were saying that mortars have a limited effectiveness. What I would say is that the way most people are using mortars is extremely ineffective. Because let's be real, mortars in this game are extremely expensive. And if you're not getting more out of your mortar teams than just a round or two, or like I did in my first playthrough, one salvo and then they get destroyed, that's a waste of resources, man. And resources can be hard to come by on some of these playthroughs. So if you follow the way that I'm about to show you how to use mortar teams, your offensives are going to go from turtle speed to warp speed. You're going to get to the point where your advances are so fast that you're going to be limited by the amount of HR you've got to backfill all these positions. And I'm not exaggerating, okay? So, first of all, how do we get mortar teams? Well, if we go to our commander menu by hitting Y, okay, then we can go to recruit squad. We got an option to recruit a mortar team, which is a two-man team with or without a vehicle, or recruit an infantry squad, and then we can recruit a mortar squad. Now, I've tried this half a dozen times, and all I ever get is basically a rifle squad. There's no mortar in that I can figure out how to fire. Okay, so if there's some of you have used that and know how to make it work, please in the comments let me know. So we can all benefit from that. But instead, we're going to focus on a mortar team. Okay, so we recruit a mortar team with or without a vehicle. My guess is most of you are getting it with a vehicle. Absolutely not. Never, ever waste your money on a vehicle. Okay? Because in my first playthrough, I realized that the AI is just janky as all get out. It can't figure out how to navigate boulder fields, or fences, or trees, or any of that. And then a lot of times the driver just runs off and leaves the gunner. While the gunner's breaking the mortar down, the driver drives out of the danger zone and the gunner gets killed. And then you got a mortar team that can't fire. You basically don't have a mortar team. You got a team leader driving around in a vehicle. So, I mean, that's not a good use of resources, okay? So we get a two-man team, we get them without a vehicle, and you're thinking, how in the world are we going to move these guys? Well, some of you are going to think this is an exploit, but my contention is we're not exploiting anything. We're using the game and the resources we're provided, and this is a workaround for the janky AI related to vehicles, okay? Now, you notice that icon above them, they're in the firing mode, right? We go to the map, they're firing mode. I could give them a fire order because the mortar's been placed. In this configuration, you cannot fast travel them, okay? You have to have them, give them a marching order, a foot movement order, in order to get them to break the mortar down, and then you can fast travel them, okay? So in this case, I own this resource over here. It's got this lovely field, and we want to position them in fields because you can't fire a mortar in trees. The rounds have the nasty habit of hitting a limb and exploding above the gunner's heads. So this game takes that into consideration and does not allow you to be in a firing configuration if you've got overhead cover. So I'm going to tell them or give them an order to run over here. Then once they break the gun down, which they have, I'm going to fast travel them to that artillery or that anti-tank emplacement hope they don't land on top of it and kill everybody. And we'll see how that works. But that's how we move mortar teams, and that's how we're going to move them after we fire. And I'll kind of walk through that. We're not going to shoot at enemies, but I'm going to explain to you how we do that. Okay. Now, this will not solve all of your movement issues, because sometimes when we tell them to move and we fast travel them, they still split up. The commander will fast travel, but the dude with the mortar tube won't. And then the commander will move to the new location. The guy with the tube will run toward him, and then the commander runs back toward the dude with the tube. So it's weird. When that happens, you either got two options. You either dismiss them and hire another team, or if you've got another team working, you just let that team carry the load. I generally, and I'm going to do a video on this where we attack an outpost, but I generally do a preliminary bombardment, and then I'll have my mortar teams kind of go silent for a bit and see how the fight goes, and if the enemy brings in additional resources, then I might drop in, more salvos, okay? So, the other thing to take into consideration with a mortar team is range, okay? Big blocks on the map are 1,000 meters. Little blocks are 100 meters, okay? So we're going to focus on big blocks. Mortar teams generally can fire just over 3,000 meters, so it's 3 blocks. So with this mortar team, I could fire on that outpost, that resource, probably hit that radio tower, but I could not hit the factory area over here, okay? So keep that in mind. So with the way we're going to do this, we're going to fire the team, and then we're going to move them like I showed you, okay? Understanding that we need to do a little planning ahead of time so that we bounce them between locations that are still within range of the target that we're shooting at, okay? In this case, I'm going to just fire out in this field so you can kind of see how this works, okay? Now, the other thing to take into consideration before we do that is if I'm going into combat, how many batteries do I need to take with me? Generally, I think if I think I'm only going to need 1 battery, I'll take 2. Why? Arma AI, If I think I'm going to need 2, then I'll take 3. Because at some point, one of them's probably going to glitch, and you're probably going to have to dismiss it and either go with the rest of the remaining batteries or hire another one, and that bogs your attacks down. And the longer these attacks take, the more likely you are to get smashed by the opposing AI. Okay, so we've got some firing options, and I want to get up here so we can see that. Alright, so we're going to fire this battery, okay? We go to wide, open our commander menu or battle options menu. We go to AI management, artillery support menu. We could either do HE or smoke. My experience is that smoke is not worth the time and effort. It just doesn't lay a thick enough smoke screen to benefit your troops. Maybe some, but not as much as you would think. It's not an impenetrable wall that your guys can hide behind. You're still going to take a certain amount of damage. Think of it this way: it's a randomly generated percentage of reduction is basically what it amounts to. And to me, it's just not worth it. Dead enemies or incapacitated enemies are not going to fire back at you at all. So, if we're going to fire HE, we can do a single point strike, or we can do a barrage. A single point strike is just that. You pick a point on the map, and it drops a certain number of rounds, and it will bracket around where you've told it to. I generally fire 4 And generally what it does, it kind of brackets the four corners around where I've told it to hit, which is pretty solid. Barrage is going to fire based on a line. Barrage takes longer because as in real life, the gunner has to recalculate where the next round is going to. So a 4-round barrage is going to take basically 2 or 3 times longer than 4 rounds on a single point. So I'm going to show you a single point strike, then we will move the mortar like I move it in combat, and then we'll drop a barrage, hopefully in the same spot. Hopefully I won't kill myself, but I want to drop it close enough you can see how it works. So we're going to do a single point strike, do it right there in that field. We're going to drop 4 rounds. Okay, requesting 4 rounds. It's going to take 27 seconds. Now I would count to 10, and then I would move my battery, okay, because that gives him enough time to drop the rounds down the tube before I move him. If you move him too fast, he won't drop all 4. Now I'm gonna let the rounds impact before I move him, so you can see how the bracket works. Okay, so give him the fire order, wait 10 seconds, tell him to move. Going to move right there in the middle of that parking lot. Y, fast travel. If you've got 2 batteries, the easiest way to do that is to fire one, fire the second, move the first, move the second, and then evaluate the damage that's been done. Okay, so they moved up there. They're ready to fire again. We're going to come back. We're going to do AI management, artillery support, HE barrage. We're going to drop. The first point is the first round that's dropped. The second point is the second round that's dropped, and now you're firing a barrage. And I may have to go down and participate in that fight here shortly. So now, farther away, you'll notice it takes 40 seconds for those rounds to impact. In the meantime, I think I'm going to move him down there to get closer to that fight that's happening, because I can hear a lot of those tanks firing down there. So with the barrage, it's walking. There'll be one round after another. In a line. That's weird. Seemed like that was only 3 rounds. Alright, so in this case I'm firing blind. I really don't like to do that, but since I got you guys on here, I'm just going to fire at those light tanks just for the heck of it. There he goes, he sets up. Now, we got 5 rounds going out. Wait our 10 seconds to give him time to get off of that. We're going back to that field to avoid counter battery fire. Yeah, the tanks are gone. May have destroyed them. Now, keep in mind, we're still subject to countermeasures, okay? So if you think that you can just do a round robin and bounce between 3 different positions and bomb the enemy into oblivion. That's not going to work. The AI is going to get wise to that after the 5th or 6th salvo, and they're going to insta spawn a QRF on top of you, an airstrike on top of you, or something. So don't just think that you can sit out there and spam mortar rounds with them all day long. It's not going to work. But this is much more effective than giving them a vehicle and trying to move them around. Your mortar teams are going to survive longer. You're going to lose fewer HR and fewer dollars this way because you're going to have mortar teams alive at the end of the combat. So if that was helpful, leave a like, subscribe, comment. You know the routine. Much appreciated. Hope this helps you guys. Have a good day. Thanks.